modern cities, we feel a safety that comes from living in a civilized world. But there was a time when danger lurked everywhere. Huge predators, meat-eaters of incredible strength, ran, swam, and flew their way to the top of the food chain. To understand just how fearsome these creatures were, we can now bring them to virtual life in new and scary ways. Huge teeth, powerful bone-crushing jaws. These highly adapted killing machines were the top carnivores of their day. But all that is left of the dinosaurs are their bones, teeth, eggshells, footprints, and skin impressions. The fossils of these mega predators are star attractions that pull in the crowds. Their proportions fascinate and challenge our sense of the world, its history, and our place within it. The Tyrannosaurus rex, called Sue, caught the public imagination because it was the most complete specimen of a T-Rex ever found. That, and because we think of the T-Rex as the ultimate carnivore of all time. 4 meters tall and over 12 meters long. The T-Rex has been gone for 65 million years, long before the first hominids appeared. But they have a hold on us, even now. T-Rex wasn't the only mega predator. After the dinosaurs, there were others. Each was the terror of its time. Some of these giant meat-eaters lived as recently as 500 years ago. Humans emerged after most of these animals disappeared. If they had survived, our lives would be very different. Although the majority of dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago, many scientists now believe they lived on by evolving into birds. Sparrows and robins and blackbirds may be the T-Rex's closest living relatives. And at one time, there was a bird that was just as brutal as any of the carnivorous dinosaurs. It was called Titanis, and at almost 2.5 meters tall, you certainly wouldn't want one outside your front door. million years ago, this extraordinary bird hunted the grasslands of Florida. At about the same time, early humans, called Homo habilis, were spreading across Africa. If the earliest humans had lived here, Titanis might have put an end to our species before we even got started. Only a few of the bird's fossilized bones have been found, but they give a glimpse of a strange-looking creature. Titanis was a giant, flightless bird. It weighed over 150 kilograms. Its middle toe was as long as a man's hand. But the tip of its wing was no bigger than a turkey's. Neck vertebrae, the size of a horse's, supported a massive head. The cheekbone ties the huge animal to a family of carnivorous birds that flourished in South America. These giant flesh-eaters are appropriately called terror birds. Sculptor Richard Webber has been commissioned by the Florida Museum of Natural History to create a life-size sculpture of Titanis. He only has a handful of pieces to work from, but it's enough of the puzzle to see the whole bird. First, it's built a quarter size to set the pose. The tiny wings look out of scale. But flying was an unnecessary waste of energy. The fossil evidence suggests Titanis did just fine on foot. It could run at up to 80 kilometers an hour.
A swat from a claw like this, would definitely put you down.
As far as we know, no human ever came face to face with Titanis, but if they had, there would have been little escape. With a beak as big as a horse's head, Titanis probably thrashed its victim against the ground, then ripped off pieces, or swallowed it whole. A metal bar becomes a single toe on the giant's foot. With its clawed feet, it could trip, trample, and slash at its victims. The life-size sculpture shows only too clearly what the terror bird did to its prey 2 million years ago, and could have done to humans. Mega predator Titanis started out in South America, but about 3 million years ago it left the southern hemisphere and spread north. The giant terror bird found a home on the Florida prairie. Since then, animals have come and gone, but places like Payne's Prairie still look much as they would have done when Titanis arrived.
Imagine a Florida morning just as this one. Only 1.5 million years ago, the animals living on this open prairie would have been very different than the animals living today. They would have included animals such as Titanis, a giant sloth, a large armadillo, and North American llamas and pronghorns and peccaries and large scimitar cats, all looking for a morning meal.
What could be more strange than a giant killer bird that didn't fly? Australia had the answer. A huge carnivore called a giant butcher. Museum workers struggle to piece together a mega predator that once ruled the animal world. The largest carnivore to roam this island continent was a gigantic lizard. Its name is Megalania prisca, or giant ancient butcher. Besides its enormous size, little is certain about the giant lizard. It may have lived until quite recently, about 30,000 years ago, when Aborigines were already in Australia. If that is right, it would have taken more than a boomerang to fend off an attack from this mega predator. There is a relative of Megalania alive today. It gives us a good idea how the giant lizard might have behaved. This mini Megalania also lives on an island. Isolated by sea barriers, the lizard survives as top predator. The Komodo dragon is a monitor lizard native to the Indonesian island of Komodo and its neighbors. It grows to about 2.5 meters long and weighs around 70 kilograms, 90 after a good meal. It has a local reputation as a man-eater. One incident involved a European tourist. No one knows if the dragon did the killing or just the eating. The cold-blooded metabolism of reptiles is well suited to the tropics. The intense heat of the midday sun makes the dragon alert and ready for action. Over short distances, the dragon can run as fast as a human, but it prefers ambush. It's an efficient hunter. Its messy bite causes maximum damage and bleeding. Its saliva harbors 52 types of bacteria. 47 are toxic. If the dragon's prey doesn't die from blood loss, it will probably die from infection. It's quite likely that all of these traits were shared by Megalania. But Megalania was twice as big as the Komodo. Australia's giant lizard was 6 meters long and weighed over half a ton. Megalania's world would not be a pleasant place for humans. But our modern world might suit it very well. We just might become items on their menu. Established suburbs are the preferred habitat. The landscaping is mature, so there are plenty of places to hide. When the dry winds blow, the waterhole is a good place for hunting. Megalania knows from experience that thirsty animals will go there to drink. All it takes is the patience to wait it out until the prey becomes distracted and careless. Megalania's metabolism is extremely efficient. It can go for long periods without eating. Unlucky that today it was hungry. Another mega predator was even larger, and it too has a living cousin, the great white shark. The great white has nature's most infamous set of jaws. With its streamlined body up to 9 meters long and its razor-sharp teeth, the great white is one of today's top marine predators. An efficient hunter, the great white's only flaw is its poor eyesight. Although its real threat to humans is relatively small, the great white still looms as a creature of almost mythic size and power. But the great white is small next to the largest shark to have ever lived in the ocean. If the tooth of today's great white wasn't big enough, Carcharodon megalodon was the size of a bus. When it opened its jaws, it could have swallowed a car. But such an enormous animal raises the question, why was it so big?
Carcharodon megalodon, or the largest of the great white sharks, was around probably 15 or so million years. And one of the reasons why we think that megalodon got so large is it responded to available prey, which most likely were whales.
About 55 million years ago, the ancestors of whales crawled from the land back into the sea. For millions of years, they were relatively small creatures. Then they started to get bigger in the warmer and food-rich waters of the oceans.
Animals get larger in response to food availability. And when you have larger herbivores, for example, then of course the predator gets bigger in response. And this is generally in response to a climatic change. The warmer the climate, the more food source you have, hence the larger animals can actually get. So the megalodon most assuredly got large in response to an availability of food, which were whales, because previously right whales didn't exist. Sharks have been around for hundreds of millions of years, but there were no whales.
The shark has a hunting design that has worked successfully for hundreds of millions of years. Row upon row of razor-sharp teeth, a conveyor belt of biting tools that are continually renewed. As one row falls off, a new one moves into place.
Sharks shed their teeth 1,000 times at least in a lifetime. Now, these teeth are not very sharp because they've been tumbled around river sediments and sand for millions of years. But in life, if I were to do this to a real megalodon tooth, I might just cut my finger right off.
These are the jaws that made Megalodon the ocean's top predator of all time. On land, there once lived a creature with jaws just as terrifying. 30 million years ago, a giant animal that looked much like a warthog roamed the American West. Being a carnivore, if it were around today, it might go straight for your breakfast. When it lived, it may have hunted in packs, but to see just one would be terrifying enough. Its name was Megacoris, or very big pig. Its remarkable jaws were almost a meter long.
Now imagine a a pack of these guys on the Wyoming plains 30 million years ago, running through a herd of rhinos, and a rhino falls over and the two giant killer warthogs go kapow, kapow, rhino haggis. Kapow.
Megacorys is like no pig alive today.
Kapow.
3D animators have created a life-sized robot of the animal, based on the theories of paleontologist Bob Barker.
This is the warthog from hell. We call the robot Helen. Helen is an example of what we paleontologists for a century and a half have called giant pigs. And we call them giant pigs because this extinct family has pig-like molars, and we paleontologists were fixated about molars, fixated. Take a look at this chomper. Now that's like yours, like a person's molar or a pig molar. You find a tooth like that today in animals that eat roots and berries and nuts and acorns. So if you're fixated on molars, you'd say this is a harmless herbivore, and you'd be totally wrong, totally. To understand the truth about the killer warthog, you don't start with the front end. You start at the rear end. The hardest job you can give a gut is eating plants, because to digest plant cell walls, you need a huge gut that bulges all around the rib cage. So it looks like a cow or a pig or a pony. But what do you see? You don't see that at all. Conclusion? The killer warthog ate concentrated, protein-rich food. That means meat. Now, what sort of meat did the killer warthog eat? It ate meat that tried to run away and that failed. This is how we know. A pair of hooves on each corner of the animal. The hooves are strong and compact, ideal for running and accelerating over dry woodland soils. To the hooves are attached strong, long wrists or ankles, and then up to immensely powerful shoulders and hips. This critter at a half ton or a full ton could go 40 miles per hour plus. It is the fastest big animal of its time. The skulls of these fossil warthogs are wonderful objects. And the most spectacular thing is the clue to the killing apparatus. That's this huge hole here behind the eyes. That's full of jaw muscles, the muscles that power the killing bite. And the best part, of course, the jaw joint is way in the back and faces directly downward. So when you put the jaw in like that, the jaw can open like a rattlesnake to be on a right angle. And once opened like that, these jaw muscles can snap shut, throwing the jaws together into a terrible bone-crushing crack. So this killer warthog, when it snapped its jaws, could bite through a Buick.
The killer warthog might seem like a modern nightmare, but there was another mega predator with teeth as big as daggers. "7 million years ago, mega predator Barbarophilis lived in the forests of America's Midwest. It had the largest set of saber teeth of any carnivore ever. Barbarophilis was a nimravid, a family of animals related to cats. Cats, of course, are here today, but what happened to Barbarophilis? It was a top predator. Its 20-centimeter long canine teeth were as sharp as daggers. For Larry Martin, this highly adapted killing machine is his favorite animal.
I'd like to make a reconstruction of Barbarophilis, and this is what I think that it would look like right here. The biggest one would be about the size of an African lion, or about 600 pounds. But you look at this thing, you can see it doesn't look like an African lion. It looks like a 600-pound wolverine. If we take this canine over here and we compare it to the shin bone, we can see a proportion that's not true for any other animal. The shin bone's actually shorter than the canine.
At the time of Barbarophilis, the Midwest was heavily forested. At its edges, in the shadows, Barbarophilis lay in wait. The hind legs were short and flat-footed, the sign of an ambush predator. Surprise was its game, not long-distance running. After a short, furious chase, the massive forelimbs grasped and held the prey. Its teeth did the rest. 7 million years ago, the short-legged rhino called Teleoceras grazed around the ponds and lakes of eastern Kansas, an ideal meal for a mega-predator specializing in ambush.
Teleoceras probably spent its days wallowing around in the mud and swimming, but around dusk, it'd get out of the water and it'd go up on land to graze. And when it do that, it might run across the Barbarophilis hiding in the brush. In which case, the Teleoceras try to run back to the water as fast as it could. But the Barbarophilis would run alongside the rhinoceros and it'd throw one paw over the shoulder and the other paw over the head. It'd stand up on its hind legs very much like a bear, and it'd bend the head around, bulldogging the rhinoceros. And when it did that, it'd throw the neck into a curve and it'd bend the head up. So if the head was here, when it was being bulldogged, it'd turn up like that, and this take these blood vessels that go to the brain, they'd be sticking right there, and the Barbarophilis would bite that. And what it'd do is it would take a bite, and the canine would come behind these blood vessels. It'd drive the canine down like that, that'd cut the blood vessels and cut the saber out, so the Barbarophilis was disentangled. Rhinoceros would fall over, and Barbarophilis would have dinner.
The design of Barbarophilis allowed the jaws to stretch wide open, making enough room for the gigantic canines to do their work. The dimensions of the jaws matched the rhino's wide neck. The teeth slashed through the windpipes and arteries, but missed the tooth-cracking spine. And yet, this perfect blueprint for killing wasn't enough. Barbarophilis came well equipped, but it had a fatal flaw.
The Barbarophilan cats didn't start out big. In fact, this is the oldest one we have. It's about 14 million years old. It's called Sansensmilus.
Sansensmilus was no larger than a North American bobcat. Over the next 6 million years, Barbarophilis grew bigger and bigger. At the end of the line was Barbarophilis fricki, the biggest of them all.
The curious thing is that if we looked at the brain of Sansensmilus, it's about the size of a bobcat brain. And I've got a brain here from a 40-pound bobcat. And if I compare that to a Barbarophilis fricki brain, 600-pound animal, they're almost exactly the same size. The cats got bigger, but the brains didn't. What's that tell us? Well, it tells us, for one thing, that whatever Barbarophilis was doing with its life, it wasn't thinking.
The modern cats can't rely only on surprise. They have to pursue their prey out in the open, anticipate its next move, and respond instantly. That means being able to run well and to think. Barbara Felis was neither clever nor fast. When the forests gave way to grasslands, it was out of luck. If the world had stayed the same, Barbara Felis might still be here. But the world did change, and Barbara Felis got left behind. The same question can be asked about each of the mega predators. Why, when they were on top, did they all become extinct?
Extinctions happen for a variety of reasons. The most conspicuous reason, however, is some kind of shift in the climate, whether it's regional or global. What happens is it upsets the food chain balance. Large predators are particularly vulnerable to these extinction events because there are much fewer of them compared to their prey. So it becomes somewhat of a domino effect. The smaller species go extinct or start to disappear or get fewer in number, and the predators just bottom out.
This is probably what happened to the short-faced bear. Around 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, it had already started the slide towards extinction. But before it disappeared, the first humans trekking overland into North America came face to face with the largest carnivore on the continent. Those early explorers had seen bears before, but nothing could have prepared them for this close encounter. A male grizzly bear can weigh over 350 kilograms. The Kodiak is around 550 kilograms and 3 meters tall when on its hind legs. The polar bear is the largest of the modern bears, but even it would have looked up at the short-faced bear. Side by side, the skulls of a Kodiak and a short-faced bear provide a telling picture. The half-ton Kodiak seems almost childlike next to the biggest bear ever in North America. The life story of this short-faced bear can be read in its bones. It was a male and in midlife when it died. Around 11,000 years ago, it roamed the open lands of Indiana. Probably weighing just under 800 kilograms, when he stood up to sniff the breeze for a scent of prey, he was as tall as a double-decker bus. The legs were extremely long, over 1.5 meters at the shoulder. Unlike modern bears, the feet pointed forward, the sign of a good runner. The skull was wide and flat. The jaws had massive muscle attachments for gripping prey. With such enormous size, it could hunt and tackle any game it chose: deer, giant sloth, or long-horned buffalo. The short-faced bear lived at a time when humans were also wandering the land. But if they spotted him, they were probably too close. All that remains are the collection of fossilized bones safe behind museum glass. But in life, it wasn't a bear you'd want to come face to face with. Humans and mega predators would clash again. This time the settlers were the Maori of New Zealand, and the carnivore was a giant bird called the Haast's eagle. The crown eagle of Africa is the most powerful forest hunter in the world today. Its enormous talons have bone-crushing power. The golden eagle, the most widespread of the world's large eagles, is used for hunting. It's not unknown for them to attack and even kill their handlers. But the most fearsome eagle ever to swoop from the sky was bigger than both. Haast's eagle lived in New Zealand until about 500 years ago. To understand this huge bird, first we need to realize the size of its prey. The South Island of New Zealand looked very different back then. It was covered in thick forest and filled with extraordinary birds, including the eagle and the flightless plant eater, the moa. When Europeans arrived in the 1800s, that world of birds was gone, and all that was found of the gigantic moa was its bones. The largest moa could weigh in at over 250 kilograms and was the size of a small elephant. At the time when these giant birds filled the forests, there were no predators on the ground in New Zealand. And people hadn't yet arrived on the island. But there was still danger. The threat came from the sky. Haast's eagle, the largest eagle that has ever lived. It weighed almost 15 kilograms and had a wingspan of more than 2.5 meters. Little was known about the eagle until it was studied in detail by Dr. Richard Holdaway.
One of the best ways of visualizing the size of Haast's eagle is to take the femur, the upper leg bone, and this is the femur of a bald eagle, and that is just the musculature etched on there. It was a huge animal.
A 15-kilogram bird is almost too large to fly, but this one did.
The muscle attachments and the articulations show that this bird not only flew very strongly, but it was a flapping bird. It didn't soar like vultures. It flew through the forest at great speed, 40 or 50 miles an hour, and swooped down on its prey.
But even at 80 kilometers an hour, how could Haast's eagle bring down a moa that was 10 or even 20 times its size? Talons, the size of tiger's claws.
One can imagine that these great eagles hunted their prey very much like the great eagles of today, the harpies and the crowned eagles of Africa. And the crowned eagle sits above its preferred hunting ground on a branch by a pool, waiting for the antelope to come around. And Haast's eagle sat just in the same place beside a pond, just waiting for the moa to come out for their early morning drink. In range, zero on, and then swoop at 50 or 60 or 80 miles an hour down. But it wasn't a big impact when it arrived, because they didn't want to bowl the animal over.
The falling moa could have crushed the eagle. Instead, it landed on the victim's back before the killing began.
Where the left foot of the bird attacked and struck and nailed into the bone on this side, and as the animal moved, the hind claw drove through 2 inches of feathers, skin, flesh straight into the bone and tore the bone out. The other foot would be up at the base of the neck, crushing through the arteries and air sacs, and the moa, however much it moved, would be drowning in its own blood.
In its day, the Haast's eagle occupied the top spot in the South Island's food chain. Then, competition arrived. Less than 1,000 years ago, people came to the South Island of New Zealand, and they too began to hunt the flightless moa. Cave paintings can give a glimpse of that time. A time when humans and the eagle both fed on the same prey. Each had its tools for survival. The eagle had hunted for millions of years, armed with its talons. The newly arrived humans had clubs and fire. Within a few years, a series of huge fires permanently changed the landscape of the South Island. Some were caused by nature, some were probably set by man. When the flames burned out, much of the dense forest where the eagle and moa lived was gone. As the moa disappeared, the eagle was forced to look for other food. It must have been a desperate time. Man's arrival on New Zealand's South Island changed its landscape forever. With much of the habitat of Haast's eagle destroyed and its preferred prey, the flightless moa bird, in serious decline, times were lean for the mega predator.
It would have been quite dangerous, I think, to have walked around in the forest, because these eagles had a search image for large animals walking around on two legs.
The 10-centimetre long talons that brought down an almost 300-kilogram moa could just as easily pierce the skin of this creature. Haast's eagle would soon disappear. The world had changed too much for it to survive.
This bird was a perfectly functioning organism in an intact environment until about 750 years ago. 50% of the South Island was denuded of the forest habitat. At the same time, people were taking out most of the prey, and a bird that large could not subsist on eating wrens and sparrows. They were starved of their main diet, they had nowhere to live, and probably by about 500 years ago, Haast's eagle followed the moa into oblivion.
There are no mega predators around today, unless we consider humans as filling that role. Whatever drove them into extinction, all we have left are their fossilized remains. Scientists and animators have joined forces to come up with new ways of bringing these once top carnivores back to life, so that we can better understand them. But if T-Rex or any of the mega predators were unleashed on the world today, forget about sharing lunch. It would be all you could do to avoid becoming lunch.